All right, Ezekiel 43. Yeah, it's been a long week already. Ezekiel 43, thanking God for endurance, as we say from time to time. Let's call this chapter, If They Are Ashamed. And once again, extra qualified with this is basically just going to be my guesswork because this is one of the more hotly disputed, I won't say chapters, but for me, it reminded me of why these verses or these chapters seem to be the source of much confusion and maybe contradiction between quote unquote scholars, or at least people who have tried to make sense of them. And I think for me, it goes to this chapter. And so I'm going to just qualify my guesswork, give it without being ashamed, and say it's my guesswork. This is not what the word actually says. But when verse 10 says, "As for you, son of man, describe to the house of Israel the temple, that they may be ashamed of their iniquities, and they shall measure the plan. And if they are ashamed of all that they have done, make known to them the design of the temple, its arrangements, its exits, and its entrances. That is the whole design, and make known to them as well all its statutes and its whole design and all its laws, and write it down in their sight, so that they may observe all its laws and all its statutes and carry them out." That qualifier may help give us an understanding of this temple, because as I've heard, there are some who believe it is simply a metaphorical temple or symbolic for the New Jerusalem, or basically the people of, not the New Jerusalem, the people of God, or what the church is being described as a dwelling place for God in the Spirit. But others believe it is a literal temple that God had designed for a place for, as we mentioned, him to have a restored, renewed presence with his people, as I talked about with the palm trees and the cherubim, quite possibly with a peace that they never understood. Either way, it's described as a forever place. But the fact that he is qualifying the revelation to the people based upon whether or not they are genuinely ashamed of all the wrongs that they had done means that it didn't have to be built. It doesn't mean that God was never going to restore his peace with his people and all mankind, or at least those who would accept his invitation for a renewed peace. But it doesn't mean that it had to happen this way. And that might help explain some of the differences between what this temple looks like and the temple that they actually rebuilt, which is much smaller than what this is described as being. And so understanding that God's plan is not going to be stopped by our refusal to work with him. But it doesn't necessarily have to take shape in the way that he has extended the offer. And so with that, that is not necessarily an explanation for why we have this Ezekiel 3 or Ezekiel 40 through 48 third temple, and no period of history that seems to have described a temple that was built consistent with what we have here. It may still be a future place, physically built for God's restoration of peace with his people, but it could also have been one of those things that simply represents another missed opportunity in the history of mankind, passing on its opportunities to have peace with God. A plan that was possibly, quite possibly, replaced by the Christ and his promises to the church. Understanding that, it could still be a millennial temple. I don't know. But that sums up my 2 cents. Understanding, once again, verse 10. "As for you, son of man, describe to the house of Israel the temple, that they may be ashamed of their iniquities, and they shall measure the plan. And if they are ashamed of all that they have done, make known to them the design of the temple." I can't call it, but that's all I got. Either way, as the song says, we will understand it better by and by. Oh, and I probably shouldn't leave out that the second half of the chapter talks about a bronze altar, similar to the bronze altar, as we mentioned, that we saw in Solomon's temple, a place where they will not only offer burnt offerings, but as future chapters will show us, they will also be offering sacrifices for sins, reminding us that, once again, this temple that's described is a place where the people will still have sins to atone for. Thus, it is not the place of perfect peace, sinless peace, that it seems the revelation points forward to. But more on that, God willing, in later chapters. As we sometimes say, though, God's best to you as you go forward in him. This time and try to discern and understand the things that he has revealed as opposed to the things that he has simply kept secret.